Hello and welcome to Chapter 3, the Vehicle Space Needs, Natural Laws, and Traction. Today we are going to talk about room around the vehicle, and we'll go on from here. This chapter is going to talk about search the road ahead, managing vehicle operating space, gauge how much traction you have, drive within the limits of natural laws. Drive smoothly to minimize weight shift and when changing lanes and speed direction. We're going to start off like we have with the other chapters with questions, and starting with the adhesion or grip between the tires and the road surface is called gravity, B, inertia, C, traction, or D, kinetic energy. And again, I'm going to ask you to write the answers down to these questions, and you'll be turning them in by email at the end of the chapter. Number 2 is, how does gravity affect braking distance when driving downhill? A, it lengthens braking distance. B, it has no effect on braking distance. C, it shortens braking distance. Or D, it decreases the vehicle's momentum. Hydroplaning, or question number 3, can occur at speeds as low as blank miles per hour. A, 60, B, 50, C, 40, or D, 35. Question number 4, if a vehicle's speed doubles, the distance needed to stop the vehicle, A, increases by 2 or doubles, B, increases by 3, C, increases by 4, or D, the distance to the stop does not change. Question number 5, the blank a tire's contact patch, the blank traction the tire has with the road surface. A, smaller and more, B, larger and more, C, smaller, less, or D, B and C. Okay, now we're going to get into the unit information. Information covered in this chapter will be practice using vehicle controls, know where to look when driving, your vehicle needs operating space, natural laws that affect your ability to control your vehicle, road conditions, materials on the road surface, weather and tire conditions affect traction. Weight transfers to different parts of your vehicle depending on input as the driver. It is important to minimize weight transfer to maintain traction and control of the vehicle. We're going to go next specifically into vehicle controls and input. What are the 3 primary controls a driver uses to change the speed and placement of the vehicle? The answer to that question is the primary controls: accelerator, brakes, and steering wheel. Give me a moment while we get the information up here. Using these controls might feel strange and uncoordinated at first, but as you practice driving, you will become smoother, more coordinated with your accelerating and steering and braking. Practicing also helps you to tune into the differences in feel of the vehicle. Feel how your body and vehicle react abruptly using controls compared to smoothly operating the controls. How should you position yourself to be able to smoothly operate the vehicle controls? Adjust the seat properly, adjust the steering wheel properly, hands at 9 and 3 or 8 and 4, right heel on the floor centered in front of the brake pedal, left foot resting on the dead pedal if your vehicle has one. So here we can see our foot is rested nice and securely on the floor. Here is the dead pedal, and our foot is rested next to that, just to give a good picture. Here, backing up a little bit, the hands are positioned on the steering wheel at 9 and 3. If this individual moved their hands down just a little bit, this would be the 4 o'clock position, and down a little bit just under this area here would be the 8 o'clock position. So 8 and 4 would be holding on a little lower, and 9 and 3 is as pictured in the picture. Smooth operation of the accelerator, steering, and brakes depend on these proper positions. So having your arms in a good, nice bent position, holding the steering wheel at the 2 positions I just discussed, and then of course having your feet positioned in the areas as shown will help us to get good operation of the vehicle. What exactly should we be looking at when driving? We're going to search for objects or conditions within, along, or approaching your planned path of travel. We're looking for things specifically that could be a hazard and increase your risk. On every mile you drive, these factors can influence the risk of being involved in a crash. For example, these logs on this truck here, they seem pretty secure and they seem like they're pretty safe. However, they could have pieces that fall off, or maybe they have a malfunction of this pole holding them on, and maybe we have a bigger issue. Searching maybe this individual in this vehicle, we can see their brake lights are not on at this point in time, but if their brake lights came on, maybe we need to quickly adjust to a slower position. Looking down farther, we can see that everybody is doing well. They're moving along forward and nobody has to move or do anything differently. So we can see in this picture, we look pretty safe at the moment. You actively have to search. So as I just talked about a moment ago, we're looking down the road and we don't want to stop searching just because we think, oh, it looks pretty good at this point in time. We want to, oops, excuse me, I'm going to back up. I bumped a button there. We want to actively be looking. Conditions could change at any moment. And so we want to make sure that we're safe along the way. And by actively looking and continuing to look, we know that our situation is always going to be safe, or as safe as we can possibly make it. It is true, what the eyes see, the brain directs them to look for. So if we are looking for things, we will see them ahead of time. And here we go. To see what the eyes can see, to help the brain to see what it's looking for, we want to look 20 to 30 seconds ahead on both sides of your path. So as you can see, actually looking way over here, we can see vehicles are going in the opposite direction. And that 20 to 30 seconds is actually going to bring our focus, as I keep pointing, way out here. And of course, as I'm talking, I'm an experienced driver, so that's why I was talking ahead a little bit. I don't want to look right in front of the vehicle that's just ahead of me. That doesn't give me a good enough picture. I want to look way out here, about 20 to 30 seconds ahead. Oh, excuse me, I keep bumping the wrong button this morning. And we have one little area to talk about just yet here. You also need to know your vehicle's placement in relation to other objects. This will help you to judge whether you can safely move into a planned space ahead or to the side. So again, if I was this pickup truck here, we can see that in a moment, there's a large space in front of the truck right next to us. So right now, we're unable to move into the travel lane and drive right next to this truck. We want to wait until we get ahead of him and we can move over here and change our lane of travel. And this will all be talked about in a future session on why we would be changing lanes, why we would want to be over here. But just note that when we're traveling down the road, we want to try to be in the travel lane if we're going to be here for a long distance of time. So we're always searching ahead to see, when could I get back over there safely? And again, this will be something we talk about in future chapters. Now we're going to go back to the slide that I keep bumping on a couple of times. Remember, eyes up mean that you should see everything around you. If you're ever surprised by something around you, you weren't driving with your eyes up. And what we mean by that is we want to always be looking around, as I had said. We don't want to look close to our vehicle space. We want to look further in the distance. We don't want to just look straight ahead. And I'm going to back up to that picture again. We want to, again, be looking to the left, looking to the right, looking to the front. And even we have the opportunity to look behind, and we should be glancing back there as well. That sounds kind of strange, but there is activity that can happen behind us, and we want to know what's going on. All right, I'm going to move back to the slide I was just on again. Okay, we're going to move to the next one. How does the road talk to you, and how does it communicate with you? There are all sorts of ways the road can talk to you. We have just read it, and examples include signs, road conditions such as water on the road, how much traffic is nearby, signal lights, and road markings. So again, as we go up to eyes up, we can see here, this is actually a hazard on the road. Even though they're off to the side, we can see a person, we can see a vehicle on the side. We would have a lot of things going through our mind at this point in time. What is this person doing? Is this person working on his vehicle? Is he going to stay over there? Are they going to try to come over here? Do I need to move over? Now, this vehicle, we'll learn in future chapters, should actually be trying to move over here, if at all possible. Now, the space between these two vehicles doesn't look very big, so maybe this vehicle is stuck over here, and this vehicle should be slowing down. So we should see his brake lights on to know that we should be slowing for hazards on the side of the road, and that's to increase safety for all. Here we can see pavement markings are telling us we're all going in the same direction, and we do have the opportunity to move over. So if that car could find an extra space, they could move over. And again, road markings come up in a future chapter to help us understand what is Heather talking about at this point in time. And the dotted lines here, just to give you a little precursor of what's to come, mean that this vehicle could move over. Okay, this is just a task that we're going to kind of skip over. It's an activity to do. Vehicle operating space. We want to talk about that next as to where the vehicle can move and maneuver. Where and how you look will also affect your ability to manage the space around your vehicle or your donut. What is a donut, you ask? How much space you think you need to maintain your vehicle and the vehicle in front of you? What are the risks of following too closely? Why do you need adequate space in front of, to the sides of, and the rear of your vehicle? It is in case you need to move your vehicle to another space. You can have a buffer in case another road user attempts to move into your operating space. Having plenty of space around you can greatly reduce your risk of collision. Think of operating space like a space cushion, extending in all directions from your vehicle. In fact, space is your best friend when it comes to driving. So here is your space cushion, or kind of a funny donut, but it's a donut. We want to look at this area and kind of think this is always our cushion, and we want to make sure that we always leave this much space, if at all possible. The space to the rear, we're going to be using our rear view mirrors to see in the back. The space to the front of us, we're going to be looking out the windshield right here to make sure that we have good space in front, to the left, and to the right. We want to make sure we have this space cushion if a car in front of us stops abruptly. Maybe there's a hazard over here or another car over here. We want to make sure that we stay nice and center in our lane. Same thing if we're talking to the left. Behind us, we want to make sure we have good space as well in case we need to abruptly change our speed by braking because of something happening in front of us. So as we go down the road, we don't want to be close to others, if at all possible. We want to leave a little space cushion. Oops, I'm going to back up. I jumped a slide here. I apologize. The big donut of space around you. So we're going to come back to that donut again. And remember the D in READ, the road, stands for big donut of space. It is hard to hit something when you have plenty of space. And again, here's that little picture of a donut, just to kind of bring our mind to how much space we'd like to have. So thinking of our car in here and our big donut of space. What are examples of situations where a driver is not keeping enough space around their vehicle? Following too closely to another vehicle, driving between two vehicles, one directly on each side. So here we can't really talk about the second bullet point that I was just talking about, but we can see this car does have a good distance in front of us. If they were a little closer and we moved over in a lane, this would be us following too closely. And I'm going to bring up another slide in just a second here, and that's going to show a little more information. Here we seem to have good space on our side when we're talking about our donut. Now here, as we talk about the previous information we were just talking about, it looks to be this car is pretty close. You can kind of just barely see a roof of a car here. This would mean that we are too close to the car in front. If we are too close, or we can see a little better picture here, this looks a little too close as well. If this car needed to abruptly stop, say maybe this vehicle pulled out in front, our chain reaction here would be abruptly push on our brakes to stop, and maybe we couldn't do so. So we'd want to give a little more room here. And this here looks like good spacing for a vehicle in front of our vehicle here. Now moving on to our space cushion on the side, or our donut space on the side, you can see each of these three vehicles are actually very nicely centered in their lane. So here's our white line depicting our lanes. This car here is nice and center. So are these cars on the left and then on the right, showing good space. How far ahead should you look when you are driving? To start, we want to look 12 to 15 seconds ahead along our path of travel, our visual control zone. This allows enough distance to adjust to any hazards, objects, or conditions. Now, previously I talked about 20 to 30 seconds. And here, that's kind of where we want to be looking at. This should be a higher speed roadway area. And I know this to be an expressway, in which we'll talk about in future sessions what an expressway means. The 12 to 15 seconds is talking about your up to 55-mile-an-hour roads, and of course your 70-mile-an-hour roads as well, but we want to add a little more space if we can. At 55 or less, this 12 to 15 seconds gives us good range in looking. But here you can see this car here is looking at these vehicles ahead, and that's about 12 to 15 seconds. That does give us a large picture of anything that may be a hazard in here, such as animals, maybe pedestrians. Same thing over here. So looking far ahead in the distance is best. Of course, we don't want to look right in front of our vehicle, as we're not going to have enough visual search opportunities. Also identify an alternative path in case the visual control zone becomes blocked. Alternate paths could include areas such as open lanes to the left and right, the shoulder of the road, another path that would result in a less chance of collision without putting another road user at risk. So here you can see they're giving us an imaginary box or a situation in the roadway to where we maybe have to move. And this is an opening to move over here. Or we can use and see this bus is actually way too close to this vehicle here. Now, of course, we can see the brake lights are on here. Although this light in the distance is green, our vehicle traffic hasn't moved forward yet. So actually we're all at a stop. And this looking ahead and searching for outs, this bus, if it had a little more space cushion, could maybe come over here if something behind it, maybe they were traveling too fast or not going to stop, and the bus driver could see that. They maybe could move off to the side and get out of the way. So looking to the sides, even if we're stopped at a light, will help us to see alternate plans of travel. Essentially, as we're driving on the roadway, we're always looking for the safest opportunity. to make sure we're safe in all of our surroundings, whether stopped or traveling down the road. How much room should you allow between your vehicle and the vehicle ahead of you? How far back should you be? Under most conditions, 3 to 4 seconds of following interval. This may not be enough if your alternate path involves, for example, leaving a paved roadway and stopping on a dirt or gravel shoulder. Stay alert to any vehicle behind you, including its size, lane position, speed, and distance behind you. You should be 100% situationally aware of what is around you at all times. This includes the space behind you, right here. If there is another vehicle close behind, for example, if this car is close behind, this truck driver will want to be alert of that. Let the driver become someone else's problem rather than yours. Safely change lanes if needed. Now here, this car is too close. This pickup truck here doesn't have the opportunity to change lanes. However, he could maybe slow a little bit and move over. Um, or if he's not going the speed limit yet, maybe he could go a little faster and increase the distance here. If not, coming up here, maybe finding an opportunity to move to the right and let this car speed ahead. Now, 3 to 4 seconds here. This pickup truck doesn't quite have that 3 to 4 seconds either. As we often say, a good visual thought is, can we fit a school bus in between the front of my vehicle and the back of another? Because it's hard to know where 3 to 4 seconds are. Now, when you start working behind the wheel with the individual who's going to train you, they can also show you a way to count out 3 to 4 seconds. We won't talk about it here as it's just a little difficult to discuss in this picture, but maybe in future slides we'll be able to discuss how to measure 3 to 4 seconds if you don't want to use the school bus opportunity to think of a school bus between you and another vehicle. How about if you're stopped in traffic? How much space should you keep between you and the vehicle ahead? Now here they're going to talk about a thumb rule, and I'm going to kind of skip over that and make it a little simpler to show you. We can see here, if we're sitting in this car and we're looking at the vehicle in front of us, we can see this vehicle's tire touching the pavement. So instead of putting our thumb up in our path of travel all the time, we can keep it very simple. If we stop and we're comfortably sat in our vehicle seat and we can see the tires touching the pavement of the vehicle in front of us, we have a good distance of stop between us and the other vehicle. Again, we want to stop till we leave enough room. Now, this guy looks pretty bold and abrupt, and if he came up, and this could happen, I would like to say we're always safe out on the roadway, but maybe this person has a reason to be upset with you. Maybe this person is trying to do something abrupt and crazy. I don't know. Um, the likelihood of it happening very, very slim. So don't think when we're out there driving, oh my goodness, somebody's going to come after me. But we always want to be alert and aware of our situation. And maybe what they're showing in this picture is this guy is upset that we were coming too close to his vehicle or stopping too close. So that's why we want to always stop when we're behind a vehicle so where we can see their tires touching the pavement. It's courteous. It makes the other driver in front of us feel comfortable, and then they wouldn't come out and do something crazy and attempt to harm us if we leave enough space. Here, for example, if we're closer than seeing the tires touching the pavement, this is too close. We would not be able to see their tires touching the pavement. Our out position, we wouldn't potentially be able to steer to the left or steer to the right without potentially hitting the corner of their vehicle. So if something came up behind us and was a hazard, we did not leave our out. So this is showing here how we don't have an opportunity to move. And here you can see we're giving another better visual. This car does not have room to turn to the left if something were to happen. So again, leaving that stopping distance of seeing the tires touching the pavement would move this car back to right about here, our opportunity to make an evasive maneuver, as you can see here, giving us enough room and we can turn out safely. Okay. Eye dominance. Without knowing it, everyone has a tendency to prefer a visual input from one eye to another. That is, one eye is dominant over the other. This is called ocular dominance. The dominant eye is the one the body relies on mainly to obtain precise positional information. It's kind of like being left-handed or right-handed, sort of. How do you know which of your eyes is dominant? Let's do a Miles test and find out. All right, let's do something a little fun. You're going to extend your arm straight out from your body. When your hands form a small triangle that can be seen through with both eyes open. Hold on a second here. From a nearby object, frame a nearby object in the middle. For example, a doorknob, an exit sign, light switch. Without moving the triangle, close your eyes one at a time. Your dominant eye is the one that keeps the object in the center of the triangle. And for me, as I'm doing it sitting here, my right eye seems to be dominant as I am actually looking at a doorknob myself. And the doorknob stayed right in the center with my right eye and moved right out of my path when I did this with my left eye. The right eye is dominant for 7 out of 10 people. Well, I must be one of the 7 out of 10 people. The various reference points we will discuss when used with your dominant eye. The various reference points we will discuss when used with your dominant eye. And hold on a second. Don't worry, most drivers use their dominant eye most automatically by default. How can you accurately judge the space around your vehicle? Accurate space judgment depends on your ability to visualize vehicle operating space, make accurate visual references, know your vehicle space needs, improve your driving and experience and skill. Experience and visual referencing are the most important factors in developing accurate space judgment. So going back to eye dominance, I'm going to have you, just as you're writing down the answers to the questions at the beginning of the unit, go ahead and tell me, which eye is your dominant eye? And we're going to back up just a little bit. It's going to show us a little information with the eye dominance here. Here, so I'll kind of talk about eye dominance a little bit more because it was kind of neat. I had not done this activity myself. When I looked at through my right eye for eye dominance, the donut or the doorknob I was looking at stayed right in the center. When I moved my left eye or looked through just my left eye only, the donut seemed to go over here, or the doorknob I was looking at seemed to totally disappear. So kind of neat when I looked at it as well. And all right, we're going to go to the next slide here. In addition to knowing where their vehicle is in relation to road and nearby objects, each driver is also responsible for maintaining their vehicle's traction on the road surface at all times. I'm going to ask, have you ever been in a vehicle when the tires lost their grip on the road and the vehicle started to skid? If not, have you ever seen this happen to another vehicle? I'm going to have you go ahead and write down if you have ever had been in a car when somebody's lost traction. If you're working with me, you're likely working in Michigan, and we have oftentimes snow. And potentially you've been in a vehicle where somebody who has been driving in snow has lost traction. This can also happen in the rain as well. So for Michigan, I may reference back to snowy conditions. Traction is the adhesion, friction, or grip between the tires and the road surface. Basically, it's how the tires grip or touch the road. Why do we need traction? Without traction, a driver cannot steer, brake, or accelerate, and a loss of traction can result in skidding. So we can see here, this is called the tread of tires. You'll notice tread has kind of like little teeth designs. These teeth help us maintain control on the roadway surface. Now, if these teeth get super full, and right now they're not super full of snow as we can still see the tread, but if they get super full, we might slide. And that's why in wintertime, if you've been riding with an adult or another individual who's driven in the wintertime, they're potentially going to go a lot slower than the speed limit. And speed limits are something we'll talk about in a future chapter. But they would end up going a lot slower than what conditions could allow for in a good day. And the reason that is as the tires can only traction and grip so much. And if we fill them with snow, and it can get what's called slippery. So here we can see these vehicles are driving on a decent amount of snow. If you look, you can't see the roadway, which means we don't see any black asphalt. We don't see any pavement markings. This is a snow-covered roadway. And if you're in Michigan, this can happen, usually in the winter months. And Michigan's winters seem to have gotten milder in past years, but we still get times where the roadway is covered by snow and our traction can lessen. So here, these vehicles, first of all, we'll talk about our space cushion. These cars are way too close here. We want to leave more space cushion because this can actually become very slippery. We want to make sure that we slow down so that we give opportunity for control and make sure we give good space to the left and the right. In this area, what can we control? If we look at backing up to vehicle speed, tire condition, and roadway surface. So as I talked about a moment ago, we can control vehicle speed by slowing down. We can control our traction or tire condition by going slower. We give the opportunity for our tires to grip a little bit better in the snow. Unfortunately, we can't control the snow. Now, they will most often plow these roads and try to clean them up, but it may take a little while. So if you have to leave early for work, or maybe you're in the middle of a snowstorm, plow trucks cannot keep the snow always cleaned up and clear, but they try very hard. So we have to adjust our position. And so we can control what we can control. We'll slow down, we'll increase our distance, and we could increase our safety at that point in time. Rain is another possibility too in Michigan. You do not control the condition of the road surface, but you do control your response, as we've talked about. That is why you must always adjust your speed to the appropriate for the roadway conditions. You must learn to recognize conditions that may cause changes in traction, which in turn require your speed direction. Now, it's happened to me before as I've driven along. I've been driving along and in Michigan, you might have heard the statement, if you don't like the weather, wait a moment, it'll change. It's kind of a neat little thing about Michigan is we do have multiple road or weather conditions out there. So I've been on a roadway where one moment it's sunny, nice and dry. And as I've driven a little farther down the road in my same drive, it's all of a sudden become rainy and a little difficult to see. So at that point in time, I would slow just a little bit. Instead of maybe going 55, maybe I'll go 45 or 35 so I can see better. And that'll give me increased safety and traction opportunities. If it's raining super hard, right here, it seems to be just raining a little bit, maybe misting. However, the roadways are wet. We don't see a lot of ponding and puddling of water, so we won't be hydroplaning, which is where the tires lose traction with the road. But we do want to make sure that we don't allow conditions for that, and so maybe we go just a little bit slower. Okay, we're going to come back up to the R in our READ, the road, and that means right speed for right now. Your vehicle cannot control your speed, only you can. You are responsible for the speed you travel every second you are driving. And we'll talk about that in future chapters on how to control the speed and what to do. However, we want to know that maybe we always don't go the speed limit on a roadway. We may have to go slower. Okay, we're going to have another road surface quiz pop up in just a second. Here. So rank in order, and this might be a little tough, and so I'm going to have you give it a try, and then I will respond by email what the correct answer is. But here, and I'm going to go up a little bit, I'm going to have you rank in order the greatest amount of traction to the least. So if I'm driving on the roadway, which roadway surface gives me the greatest amount of traction? Concrete, asphalt, brick polished concrete, dirt, gravel, or sand over a hard surface. Now at this point in time, I want you to just take a guess and do your best at numbering these and see which do you think on the best conditions do we have the most control with traction to the least? What kind of objects and materials on the road can reduce traction? Sewer covers, paint used for road markings, vinyl strips, tar, wet leaves, sand, loose gravel, and mud. So backing up a little bit, sewer covers, this could kind of represent maybe a sewer cover back here. It's a little hard to see, but these are covers that are in the roadway that they put down so that people can access under the roadway. Little fun fact, there are often tunnels and things under our road surface that we could get into, not us, but professionals could get into to check under the roadways, maybe to reduce clogs or something like that. So to get in there, there needs to be a cover that allows that person to get in, and we travel over them. Now they're safe. They do sit on a program that allows us to drive over them, but they can reduce traction because often it'll feel like what I call a bump or a hole in the road. Although it's not a hole, it feels like it as your car will bump up over it. Paint, this is paint. Now we shouldn't be over here driving, so I'm just using this as an example. But this paint on the roadway could become slippery. Tar, if it's a hot sunny day or maybe it's really cold, you can see this is wet here. If this was a freezing cold day, this could become black ice, and we'll talk about that in future sessions. But maybe it was hot and sunny and just started raining. That could make it slippery as well, and we'll talk about that in future sessions as well. These leaves right now are pretty affixed to the trees, so they're not falling down. But in the fall in Michigan, we know that our leaves fall down to the ground here. They can accumulate on the roadway and they can become slippery. Sand, maybe sand got dumped on the roadway, that could become slippery as well. Loose gravel and mud are the same thing. What it does is it covers the roadway and takes our opportunity for traction and makes it less, and our tires may skid over that material. Here we can see a picture of leaves. They're wet, they're on the roadway, and they can become a slip hazard. Here we're going to talk about hydroplaning. So how do road conditions contribute to traction loss? Is it true that road conditions can factor in traction loss? For example, as I said just a moment ago, early minutes of rainfall. So in Michigan, right now I'm actually recording this video and it's summertime out. So it's been very hot to very warm. And if we get rain after multiple days of being hot and warm, that rainfall could make the road a little slippery. Now it could at any point in time, but it makes it a little more slippery as we have residue from tires and maybe oil. So it increases our risk for being slippery. We're going to move a little bit here. However, road conditions do not cause traction loss. Only a driver can do that. It is the driver who decides how fast to go. Now here, if our tires encountered a big puddle of water, we should be slowing down before we come up to that puddle of water because we could lose traction control in it. The leaves, again, we should be slowing down before we come up to those leaves. The driver should be looking ahead, as we said, 20 to 30 seconds or 12 to 15 seconds. And we should see those leaves coming up. We should see the big puddle of water. It is the driver's decision on how quickly to brake. If we're looking 20 to 30 seconds ahead, we shouldn't have to brake quickly. We should be able to lift off of our brake or our accelerator and slow down nice and gently with the brakes. It allows us to get good control over a period of time. Now, of course, things happen. We might come up to a puddle we didn't notice right away. If we can brake before we get in the puddle, we might have to abruptly do that, which may help us get traction as we're coming into the puddle. Now, again, these are all things that you'll work on the roadway. Maybe you'll come to a big puddle area, and the person working with you, if it's not myself, should be discussing on how you should slow sooner. All of this stuff is just information to gather at this point in time. We're going to talk about hydroplaning just a little bit. So you can see here 1/12, or this little blue line here, of standing water could actually cause us to hydroplane. So we don't need to wait for a huge puddle of water to increase our risk of hydroplaning or losing traction with the tires touching the roadway. So if we come into rainy conditions, we'd want to slow down because it does not take much to lose that traction opportunity. We're going to go to the next slide here. How do temperatures affect traction? As an outside temperature rises from below freezing to approximately 32 degrees, icy and snow-packed areas become more slippery. This here happens in Michigan quite a bit in the wintertime. The road conditions become snowy and they become covered with snow. How do freezing temperatures affect traction? Wet ice is more slippery than dry ice. Intersections are likely to become slicker because vehicles' tires polish the ice as they come to a stop and start moving again. In short, how you as a driver adjust the road surface is much more important than whatever is actually on the road surface causing a reduction in traffic. So here, if this light were to turn red, we would want to increase our stopping distance because this is where it's likely to become polished, as they talked about, as the tires are stopped. And we would sit here, our car would warm the area a little bit. And then as we move forward, it refreezes again, becoming polished. And again, this may be talked about in future sessions or with those who are training with you driving behind the wheel. If you come into winter conditions, they may discuss how to increase our safety, slowing down and stopping. Remember that the R in read the road stands for right speed for right now. That means you are constantly judging the traction available on the road and again, adjust your speed to match it. Our roads are banked, not necessarily a huge bank, but they are so that if it does rain, they're designed for rain to slide off. If it sat flatter, the roads would pond a little bit easier. And so all roads have a banking to them to help the water flow away, which is going to position our car just a little differently. Now, you're not going to notice that much on most roadways, as the banking is just very slight. It doesn't take much to move water off the road, but it is. So it would change maybe how we steer to stay on the road. Here we can see a banked roadway is found a little bit more in curves. And again, that's to kind of move the water a little bit faster. And so you just hold your steering wheel a little bit to maintain position in the center of your lane as this vehicle is here. Now, often roads are crowned, and that's when we go down the road, we can see two cars are facing in opposite directions. And again, this is an exaggeration of a crown. You can see the cars seem pretty tilted. The crown is very slight and it's on all roadways. So let's say you're riding with a family member to the grocery store or to another location soon. When you get in the car, I want you to kind of sit and feel, do I notice that the road is crowned? And likely you won't, but it likely will be crowned to move that water away, and we just steer to accommodate that. Next, we're going to look to a shoulder area. The shoulder is just to the right or the left side of the driving surface. Shoulders can frequently provide only a escape path in emergencies. Shoulders can be made of the same material as a driving surface, like for example, concrete, a different paved surface, dirt, cinders, sand, or others. So here, right here is the shoulder. This white line, as we're going to talk in a future chapter, marks the edge of the roadway. You can see the asphalt here does not go very far past the edge of the roadway. However, there's a gravel surface here. So if we had an issue on the roadway, maybe we needed to get off for a flat tire, take a phone call, or just another reason to stop on the side of the roadway, we would move over here, we would safely stop, and we would be out of the direction of travel. Now, this also could be an evasive maneuver. If there was something here in the roadway where we needed to move over, we would brake quite a bit, move over to the side of the road, and get out of the way of the hazard or whatever's in the way of the vehicle. Now, a better place would be to make a lane change and pass around, but if we couldn't, we could always use the shoulder as well. And again, this will be discussed in behind the wheel training as a good time to use the shoulder. If you don't train with me and you train with others, hopefully they pull you off to the side of the road to see what that takes to get over to the side, get stopped, and allow you to take care of your hazard moment or a phone call or something of that sort, and to do it safely. We want to be careful as we're driving down the road to make sure we stay on the road. Here, this is unpaved. Now we're going to back up and go to previous slide information to show these are leaves. This could be slippery. The problem they're trying to show here is there is a pretty good drop from asphalt to shoulder area. You can see here the tire is actually off the side of the road, and it might make it difficult to get back onto the roadway. So we may have to come to a stop here. I'm going to read what the slide says here. It says shoulders may not be level with the road surface, as we can see here. Be extremely cautious if there's a difference in surface level of 3 inches or more. And this looks like could be 3 inches or more. When steering a vehicle back onto the roadway, so let's say you just moved off to the shoulder to avoid a hazard over here. Maybe you move over here just a little bit. Your tires could fall off here. And what they're worried about is the inside of our tires scrubbing this surface here. This surface we know is solid, and the rubber of the tire may not move back over, and it could cause actually harm or hazard to our tires. So we may have to actually come to a stop, turn our wheel, and come back on. Let's move here. Oops, I'm going to back up a slide here. So here again, this is something you'll practice when you start doing behind the wheel practice with your trainer. They may take you off the side of the road. Hopefully they're doing it nice and safely. We don't ever want to try to come off the side of the road quickly. If it has to happen, that's called an evasive maneuver, and we would work through it. But practicing how to safely get off the side of the road is something that could be done. So coming back here, we're going to look at this picture. One more question I'm going to have you give an answer to that we'll give in an email when we're all said and done here. This vehicle, they're going to ask if this vehicle lost traction. Why? Were they distracted? Did they keep enough space or didn't they keep enough space around my vehicle? Were they driving too fast or tire tread too low? And again, that's something we want to talk about is having good tire tread, and that'll be something we talk about in a future unit. If we don't have enough tire tread, we're not able to disperse the water, as actually that's what tread is meant to do, is disperse stuff around so the tire can maintain traction. But here it's rainy. If we're driving too fast, potentially we could lose our traction to the road, and we could slide out, or we could slide ahead if we needed to stop abruptly. So if we are talking about here, we'll say this car suddenly lost its opportunity to stop. Why could they lose that traction here in this picture? All right, we're gonna take just a moment. This is that time when they try to do a little activity that doesn't load up very well. And so right now I'm scrolling through PowerPoints here to get us back to our information. And it's taking me just a minute. There's a lot of activities in this one here. Okay, we're gonna load our next slide here. And it's going to say, what are some differences between natural laws such as gravity and traffic laws? Possible answers are traffic laws are breakable. Natural laws are not. Traffic laws are created by people. Natural laws are not. Traffic laws can change. Natural laws remain the same. We're going to have a video here to talk about that. Okay. So again, we're just going to review what natural laws affects traction, inertia, momentum, gravity, and kinetic energy. So again, what is inertia? Reviewing from your video, the tendency to do nothing or remain unchanged. Simply put, an object in motion will continue to move straight ahead until acted upon by an outside force. That is, the object resists changes in motion. Here we can see that when the car stops, the object carried on the roof continues to move forward at the same speed. And bam, right? Anything that is not secured will continue to move forward. So you can see the car here did an abrupt stop. For some reason, they didn't secure their TV to the top of their car, which I'm not sure why they would have a TV on the top of the car, but this is just a fun picture for today. And so that motion continued to move forward in motion. Now this is also going to show here in just a second Point of impact was right here. Okay, now this is kind of moving forward a little bit. That stop, the reason the car here in this previous slide would have stopped abruptly is maybe something here. So what this slide is showing here is maybe they hit something. So here we can see this is the point of impact showing the tire hit something here. And of course, you got to use your imagination of the tire hitting something, but you can see the debris flew way up here. So of course, this person, if this was a car back here and they hit something right here, they must have been going pretty fast to have debris come way up here. But this, like the TV in this picture, this is where the TV could have landed back here in this picture. So sorry for going back and forth, but trying to show using both pictures that if we come to a collision point of something and we're going very fast, that inertia is going to push this debris way up front here. The other issue with point of contact is inertia can be the reason for neck injuries if the occupant in the vehicle is hit from behind. So if we go back to our initial slide here, let's say this car stopped abruptly because there was a car in front right here, and let's say this car hit this car. We're going to come up here. This person is sitting in their car. They're sitting comfortably driving along. Then boom, they get hit. Oops, we're going to come back here. Boom, they get hit from behind and their neck goes backwards. So it's how we have neck injury. So again, this is why we want to leave our space cushion, because inertia can't be changed. We can change the speed of which inertia is affected and increase our safety by, again, going back to our space donut, slowing when we need to, and making sure that we have as much control over inertia as we can, even though we can't control inertia. But by going slower, maybe we reduce this opportunity for our neck to get bended backwards if we have to stop abruptly. Here, inertia can affect traction. Okay, so here they're coming into a curve. They're showing that this red line here, this car is traveling in this direction. However, we would know that we need to go around the curve here, and you can see the car did not. Now, the reason the car did not is they did not slow before coming into the curve. So this car should have been slowing way back here to know that they're going to make it through the curve with increased safety. This car did not. Maybe they were distracted, maybe it was wet, maybe it was slippery. Could be multiple reasons why they didn't, but we can see that if we don't slow down, potential for us to go straight ahead has increased. Now here, what we want to do, as I was saying, we want to slow down back here. So we're starting to reduce our speed. We're slowing even more. We have a good speed control to get in the curve, maintain the curve, and then as we're straightening out from the curve, we're going to accelerate again. So as we can see here, this car controlled their inertia by slowing, continuing to slow, maintaining the slow, maintaining, and speeding as they come out. So a vast difference on what we could do with inertia. Inertia is still there, it's going to push the car, but instead of going too fast and getting pushed straight, we were nice and slow and controlled, and we ended up going through the curve very well. Again, this is going to be a training factor when you get out behind the wheel. Your person you're working with will work on training you through that to make sure that you come through curves with safety. Oh, and this is showing us creepy dolls. So how does inertia affect objects inside a vehicle? Causes objects inside a vehicle to continue moving when the driver decelerates and brakes. An example, a water bottle could suddenly roll out from beneath the front passenger seat after a driver aggressively brakes to avoid another road user. Plus, the speed at which any loose object continues to move forward increases the damage they can do to occupants. The higher the speed, the more the damage that can be done. That is why it's important to properly secure items within a vehicle's interior or trunk or cargo area. So this here is the back of a vehicle. I would hope that you don't have this much debris or yucky looking dolls or anything like that in the back of your vehicle. This is a lot of hazard here. If you had to have stopped abruptly, all of this stuff could fly forward and become a hazard in your car. So thus the reason, even a backpack, I was driving down the road one day and somebody pulled out in front of me, and I had to stop abruptly. And I had a backpack that was unsecured in my front seat, passenger seat. And when I used my brakes abruptly, that backpack went from positioned in the seat to positioned on the floor. And it moved pretty quickly. Thankfully, the backpack was in my passenger seat and did not come up and hit me as if it was in the seat directly behind me. But nonetheless, it was an unsafe situation by me not securing that backpack with maybe the seat belt or placing it in the trunk for safety. What factors influence the force of inertia when driving? The sharpness or turn of the curve, the vehicle weight, the vehicle height, the roadway slope, as we talked about before, and the roadway surface condition. So here we have a pretty steep curve. We'd want to make sure we slow down for it. If we were driving a heavy vehicle, such as here, this is showing you this is 2 tons or about 4,000 pounds, and this is about 80,000 pounds. So stopping 80,000 pounds or slowing 80,000 pounds for that curve is going to be far much more difficult than slowing 4,000 pounds. But nonetheless, we want to try to do that. Moving back, going to number 3 here, we can see the difference in vehicle height. So if this vehicle here maintained a higher speed, this height is going to create a problem in the curve as well. This vehicle may have increased difficulty as they are a little bit taller than this vehicle here. So height is another one. Roadway slope. Now here, if you look, you can see that this curve, actually, you can see the slope. It's not huge, but you can see that it slopes away from the curve so that water could run down this way. And here you can not really see the bank, but this here, as we talk about on the previous slide of a bank on the roadway, this one does have slight banking, but it's not a lot. So you can see the difference between slope and, of course, bank, which would be here. And again, roadway surface conditions. So here, this is very wet, so it could be slippery. And this road is dry. So we can see the 2 different road conditions here. What is gravity? Next, we're going to talk about gravity. That's the invisible force that keeps us on the ground. How does gravity affect traction when driving uphill? It is necessary to accelerate up the hill to maintain our speed. We want to keep a consistent speed as we come up a hill, and our car basically wants to be lazy. It wants to sit still and not do anything, so we have to put input when we're driving down the road. So as we're coming up the hill here, you can see this car is parked here, but we'll use it for the example purposes. If this car was coming up the hill, they would start accelerating down here a little bit to maintain our consistent speed coming up the hill. On a slippery hill, acceleration can result in loss of traction. So this is when I teach individuals, I have them give a little acceleration down here, so we're prepared coming up the hill. If we start accelerating here on a rainy or icy condition, we might lose traction and we might slip and slide. Braking too hard on a slippery downhill. So if we change position of this car and we had them moving this way down the hill, if they were braking too hard right around here, they may actually slide up to this house. That would not be a good thing. So that's why we want to control our speed before we come down the hill. Here we can see gravity downhill just a little bit better. As we go down the hill, the weight of our vehicle is going to tend to want to bring us a little bit faster. So as we go down the hill, this will be something they'll practice with your behind the wheel instructor as well. You would allow your vehicle to maintain speed. As it increased speed, you give good pressure on your brakes somewhere along the way down here. Slow yourself down. You may have to do this a few times. We don't want to ride our brakes or hold our brake pedal all the way down the hill, but we also don't want to slam on our brakes either. So again, this is going to be a practice point on how to safely slow down, and I'll let that be something that your behind the wheel instructor works on. Here we're going to have a little video. So here there's no really discussion or talk. What we're talking about here is kinetic energy. It's the amount of energy needed to propel a vehicle to move it. This is affected by vehicle weight and speed. So as you can see here, this bigger car actually created more damage and movement of the little car. This car stayed still and this car was actually thrown around. So they're showing that the energy between the two vehicles, the vehicle that's larger has more energy and moves things that are smaller. So both cars in the crash test weigh hundreds of pounds, but the smaller vehicle only weighs half as much as the larger vehicle. So the heavier vehicle enters the crash area and it moves the smaller vehicle because it's greater kinetic energy. And because the lighter vehicle's kinetic energy is less, it experiences more crash damage. If the vehicle's weights are equal, each would have experienced about the same damage. But in this case, one vehicle is lighter, so it requires less energy to bring it to a stop. The crash test video demonstrates pretty clearly that the heavier red vehicle sustained far less damage than the lighter blue vehicle. Fortunately, modern vehicles are designed to absorb the impact of the initial force because of a collision, and then redistribute the force before it reaches the occupants of the vehicle. Crash tests like this one are designed to see how well individual vehicles accomplish this. In terms of potential crash damage, you might want to factor in how much vehicle your weighs in any purchase decision. There is often a trade-off: lighter, more maneuverable, and more economical versus heavier with more potential to absorb crash forces. Of course, this trade-off does not apply to all vehicles. You might want to consider your vehicle's weight before making a purchase. This is why, for new drivers, we recommend a mid-size or large vehicle. So this vehicle here might be more economically sound or cost less along the way, but this vehicle for new drivers is what's recommended for increased safety. Just in case an accident were to happen, it allows more opportunity for the person to have an increased safety in a crash. So kinetic energy can influence vehicle deceleration, and here we're going to show how that can do that. The braking distance needed to stop a vehicle increases by the square of the amount of speed is increased. Now that's a lot of math. So let's just show here in the picture. So here, car is moving 20 miles per hour. It takes about 20 foot to stop. Here, we're going double the speed. It takes double the amount to stop, or 4 times from what it was at 20. Okay, so these numbers are kind of difficult to discuss and see, but you can see the slower the speed, the less the stopping distance. Now, we don't necessarily want to always go super slow to increase our safety. We want to look farther out again. This is that 20 to 30 seconds. We want to be able to react sooner, so using our brakes where we need to, and understanding that if we're going 40 miles an hour, it's going to take us exceptionally longer to stop than it will at 20 miles an hour. Okay, next we're going to talk about vehicle suspension weight transfer and traction. Okay, now I want you to think of a time when you were sitting as a passenger and experienced a quick, sharp turn, maybe on a roller coaster or in a vehicle. They ask us here to describe that, but I want you to just kind of think of that as we move forward. I want you to think, when you were in that curve, what did it feel like? When you were on a roller coaster, maybe, what did it feel like when you turned abruptly? Here you can see what causes the transfer of weight from one point of the vehicle to another. When at rest or at a constant speed, you can see these vehicles tend to sit flat, or the tires are distributed in weight over the whole vehicle. But as the vehicle moves, the vehicle is no longer static or stationary. The weight distribution changes. So we can see this vehicle here may be turning a little abruptly, and it's leaning a little bit to the right here. You can see that the tires lift off a little bit here, but have a little more traction here. So here they're sitting stationary, here they're making a turn. What is the tire contact patch? The tire's contact patch is a part of the tire that contacts with a road surface. It varies by size of the tire, the load on the tire, the vehicle weight, the static distribution of the vehicle's weight. The size of each tire's contact patch depends on whether the driver is accelerating, braking, or steering. So here, this is the contact patch. Oops, sorry, I'm going to go back here. If the car is turning, maybe there's more contact patch on this side or this side. If they're braking, maybe they're braking forward here, so our contact patch would be in the front. Hopefully or when they're accelerating, I should change my focus there. When they're accelerating, it moves to the back here. So different ways. Turning could contact patch here or here. Braking, maybe more contact patch here, and accelerating here. We're going to show here how weight transfer changes. So if we're stopping, the weight transfer is going to be more heavy on the front of the vehicle. And if we're accelerating, it's going to be on the back of the vehicle. Staying stationary is going to keep all four tires with increased balance. So here we can see acceleration. We've got more weight on the back tires and less touching on the front tires. Here we're braking, so we have more weight again on the front tires and less on the back. And one more here. This is turning, okay? So we're turning to the left, or yes, turning to the left as it shows in the picture here, but actually the car is turning. It is turning to the left, I apologize. So they're showing more weight distribution here on the passenger side and less on the driver's side, or they're turning to the direction of the driver's side. Here we can see it in real time that this driver is braking and turning at the same time. So they're braking and you can see that the car is squatting a little more to the right here. Do one thing at a time. That is why it's always better to do one thing at a time. Brake, then turn, then accelerate. We want to always try to avoid braking and turning at the same time. Do one thing at a time. Slow down, make your turn, then accelerate. When I'm teaching behind the wheel, you will hear me say brake, 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 turn, and as we straighten out, accelerate. If you're not training with me, it would likely be something you'll hear with your trainer as well as you come into an intersection to turn or into a curb. You will slow, you will turn, then you will accelerate. And give me a moment here. We're going to move through some slides and videos a second. So you can see the driver here is veering out of their lane. If you look here, and they had to come back. So they were showing this as a crash, but I'm not seeing as a crash. This is just showing that potentially the vehicle driver is not paying attention here. So they merged out of their lane. Oops, there we see the crash. Now that we take a little more time, they crashed into the wall. Here's another one here. And we're gonna see the driver backs into the crossing SUV behind her. So as you can see, this person's backing up and there's a vehicle coming behind her. There. So as we look again, we're going to play it one more time. We can see the person is backing up. She started backing and then looked to see if they bumped right there. Here, the driver almost strikes a pedestrian is what we're going to be looking for. They're driving along and whoops, they had to brake suddenly. Now they're in that situation. We're going to talk about how the pedestrian, uh, they did see the yellow sign for pedestrian crossing. We just passed that. Now there's no lines in the street, but there is a sign right here coming up, sign for pedestrian crossing that we are in. They should be slowing down. The pedestrians are not in a street crossing, but that doesn't matter. We need to be in control of that area. So the fact that the driver was driving at their normal speed and didn't slow first is a situation. Next one, the driver allows her car to lose traction and she crashes into the guardrail. So let's see how this happens. We can see here the sky is cloudy and dark, so potentially it's raining. And the driver is looking down. She's distracted with something here. Attention. She's crashing. So again, we don't want to drive distracted. We want to make sure we're always paying attention. And we had potential traction loss on the road due to weather conditions. So here I'm going to skip some through these. This is just an activity. And we're going to move through here. I apologize. We're going to skip through these here. So that was a few videos. We talked about inertia, kinetic energy, losing traction. As we talk through future sessions, we'll actually go into what it looks like using these in real time in different areas. So for now, this is going to end the chapter. If you have taken the AAA book that I've given as opportunity to read through as well, there are chapter questions at the end that I'm going to have you answer, and again, leave in an email stating that you're done with the chapter. Any questions can also be communicated by email, and we'll move on to the next chapter once you've completed this one.